Hey, what's going on, guys? My name is ThePromG, and holy shit, I have not said that in like a month. Yeah, I know it's been a little minute since I sat down here, recorded a video, and uploaded it for you guys, but I didn't want to force anything. I want to make sure I was giving you guys a video that I was proud of making, and it just took a little bit of time to do that. But ladies and gentlemen, today we are back, and we are back in a big way with a video that's very, very long overdue. Today, I'm giving you guys my official Berserk manga arc ranking. For those of you who don't know, basically the only manga series I've been reading this entire year so far has been my read-through of Berserk, because I've given some spicy, flaming hot takes in the past that have gotten me absolutely obliterated on YouTube and TikTok. So I figured, you know what, I ought to go back and read it through to see if I am insane or if my takes are valid, and let me tell you right now, it was probably the former. Now, a couple things to keep in mind. Obviously, this is my subjective opinion, my personal list. If you agree with it, if you disagree with it, that is perfectly fine. You are free to do so respectfully in the comments below and carry on this conversation there. And second of all, I think that all of the arcs in this manga are great. So just because one comes in at last or close to last doesn't mean I think it's bad. Just I think there are arcs that are better. But with all that out of the way, I just want to say thank you for tuning in to today's video. Whether you're a brand new viewer the first time you see me or an old supporter, I am very thankful and blessed to have you here. So with all that being said, hopefully you enjoy the video, and without any further ado, let's get right into the Berserk manga arc ranking. Alright, so starting off things at the bottom of the ranking, we have Fantasia. Now, like I said in the little disclaimer, I think Fantasia is a really promising, good manga arc so far. This would have been way at the bottom, like a 6 out of 10 for me on my initial read-through, but it's definitely grown on me a lot for several different reasons. I think the big thing that I really latched onto this time around in the arc is just the amount of awesome character moments. I mean, Fantasia is a little bit, slower on the action, but as far as the characters go, there are some insane moments here. Obviously, we have some huge development with Casca that is like 20 plus volumes in the making. We have an awesome moment with Rickert when he confronts Griffith at Falconia. We have some development with Skull Knight, some more info onto his past at the end of volume 41. In that same vein, I think the reunion between Casca and Guts is one of, if not the most emotional moments in this series. I mean, it's just devastating. Almost made me well up with some tears when I was reading it. And the last really big positive that I think sticks out about this arc is the whole lost fragment section where they go into Casca's dreams, and Guts is the dog carrying the casket. I mean, that is just a great arc, not only art style wise, but just what that symbolizes as far as a story we've been told so far. I think is super impactful. But the reasons that Fantasia ended up being at the bottom of this list, first and foremost, this arc is currently unfinished. There have been huge breaks for obvious reasons, no fault to the creators or obviously Mira himself, but it's hard to rank this among the others that are completed, and this one kind of don't know quite where it's going. And a handful of other small gripes, of course, with this being Fantasia, I thought there'd be a more focus on, magical creatures from fairy tales, but the ones we do get are stuff that we've already seen in Falcon of the Millennium Empire. So the impact of these creatures and imagery is a little bit dull just because we've gotten, a huge arc with basically the same stuff. This arc is also home to the infamous boat segment of Berserk, which a lot of people think is, the pacing is just terrible. I think that probably as it was coming out, yes, but on the read-through, I didn't think it was quite so bad, but definitely one of the weaker parts of Berserk. And on that same thought, though they are definitely very cool sometimes, especially art-wise, the sea god monster antagonist and the zombie pirates, they can be cool, but probably among the weaker antagonists in the entire series. And my last very minor gripe is with the art style. It's a very different style than what we've seen. I think that the bold outlines and the more round, smooth shading to the faces is not quite as good as the grittier style we've seen in the past, but still beautiful artwork nevertheless. And yeah, I think Fantasia is still a very strong arc, and will it go up in my ranking as the series goes on and things are concluded? I think it definitely has the potential to do that, so I'm very excited to keep reading Fantasia. Now moving on to the number 5 spot, we have the Conviction arc. Now, I want to say that I have separated out the Lost Children arc for this ranking, just to have some more diversity. Also, I think it's diverse and short enough and distinct enough to be its own thing for this ranking, though it does fall technically into the Conviction arc. But right now at the 5 spot, we're talking about the Conviction, Tower of Conviction stuff in this manga, which I still think is an amazing arc, though it probably would have been higher on my first reread. First thing I love about this arc is that pound for pound, this is probably the darkest, most grim the tone of Berserk has ever been. I mean, for a super short arc, the amount of disturbing themes and imagery that is packed into these few handful of volumes is incredible. I mean, the backdrop for this entire arc is basically this massive looming monolith, you know, this tower that represents suffering and persecution, and surrounding it you just have this wasteland full of refugees and peasants who are starving to death and being persecuted, murdered, and rounded up. And though I do really enjoy a lot of the fantastical imagery and lighthearted humor in the later parts of Berserk, for my money, this series is at its absolute best when it's dark, grim, and gritty, and Conviction is that just embodied. And similarly, I think that the religious imagery and themes of the Conviction arc are very, very well done, you know, demonstrating how religion can be a good thing, but is often the cause of a lot of pain and suffering for a lot of people. The last big thing that I really love about this arc is the introduction of Farnese, who turns into one of the best characters in the entire series. But there are a few reasons that this arc is lower on the list for me personally. First thing, this is where Isidro is introduced, who on reread I don't think is as bad of a character as I initially thought. Still not my favorite. Also, Puck starts to begin the downward spiral into just comic relief instead of an actual character. And a big thing that a lot of people point out that they don't like about Conviction arc is the main antagonist. I believe his name is Father Mazgas. I don't think he's terrible, but I don't think he's great either. Just his whole character and archetype is very straightforward on the nose, not very nuanced like some of the other antagonists. But other than that, this arc is great. Again, this is one of my favorites when I read this series the first time, and though other things have surpassed it, I still think the Conviction is great, has a lot of amazing content, a lot of great imagery and themes, and though it is sitting currently at the number 5 spot, I think that as far as manga goes in general, it's hard to get better than this. Alright, so moving on to the number 4 spot on this ranking list, we have the Black Swordsman arc. The very first arc, the introduction to this series, I have, you know, I think a lot higher than most people would have it, but personally, I think this is probably as good as you can get with an introductory arc. I mean, first things first, this arc does a stupendous job at setting the dark, grisly tone of the series and of this world with its imagery, you know, the things that take place that we see in these only 3 volumes, including some of Berserk's absolute coolest imagery. I mean, there are a few panels I mentioned in my arc review video, but you know, when they meet the God Hand in that MC Escher world, I mean, we haven't seen that since, I don't believe, and that is just so cool. Speaking of which, it is my professional opinion that the introduction of Griffith and the God Hand is the best antagonist reveal or introduction ever. I mean, I don't care if it's manga, movies, or what. This is the coolest an introduction for villains has ever been done. And in that moment where Griffith is reunited with Griffith or Femto, I mean, just the emotion that is displayed, you can instantly tell that something crazy happened between these two and just urges the reader to keep on reading, building that intrigue. And though Guts is probably at his most edgy, though also most pound for pound badass, there are some great little inklings that show there's something beneath this mask, this hardened exterior that he shows to everyone else in the Black Swordsman arc. And again, that builds the intrigue. You want to see what really happened to this person and what is this real, true character that he's just not displaying at this point in time. So with that being said, Black Swordsman arc, super underrated, and I really wish it got more love because in my eyes, this is like peak manga, and I just wish more people agree with that. Now, coming in at the number 3 spot, we have the Lost Children mini-arc, which again is part of Conviction, but I feel is just too distinct to lump in with the rest of that arc. It almost feels to me like the Lost Children arc kind of exists within a vacuum within Berserk. I mean, Guts really isn't even the main focal point of this arc, and the tone of the arc is equal parts depressing as it is hopeful, which I feel like is something we don't get in a lot of these earlier parts of Berserk. Basically, in this arc, we have Guts, who is fresh out of the eclipse, and he's basically just wandering, and he comes across this girl named Jill, who's being taken by these bandit kidnappers. But in my eyes, it's this character of Jill as well as her relationship with her friend turned apostle Rosine that is just so interesting. So first off, first big thing I like, whenever a manga has a fairy tale tie-in into the plot of the story, that's a big plus for me. You don't see it very often, but series like One Piece with Skypiea, obviously the fairy tale in Monster is another example. But you know, when you have this mythos and this simple tale that's amplified through real events in the plot, I think that is one of the most effective and interesting ways to convey your messages. With the message of this arc being essentially that you can never really run or escape from your hardship forever, but the beauty of life really comes from facing those troubles head on instead of trying to escape to some false paradise like her best friend Rosine did, which obviously ended tragically. And that message right there is the big reason why I think that the Lost Children arc is just such a masterpiece. It's a great message, and just again, the way it's portrayed in these couple of volumes, these few chapters, is just masterful. But I feel like a really underrated aspect of the Lost Children arc is just how badass it is. I mean, Guts is still extremely edgy, hungry for revenge, and he does not, well, he kind of gives a fuck, but he really, in large, does not. Once we actually get to the Mist Valley and he starts really going ham on those little bugs as well as Rosine, he goes into the nest. I mean, he's setting himself on fire and like extinguishing the flames with embryonic fluid and just entrails. That is so sick, and honestly has some of the best artwork and fight choreography I think is in the entire series of Berserk. And just how this arc wraps up with Guts saying, you know, this is your battlefield, this is your fight to fight, and you know, the final words by Jill to wrap up this arc, just beautiful. Honestly gives me chills even thinking about it. This arc, though it is short, it's packed absolutely full to the brim of amazing characters, themes, imagery, and content, and not enough good things to say about this one. Only wish it was longer. Alright, so we are finally into the top 2 arcs of Berserk, in my opinion. But I think it's safe to say that most Berserk fans have these final 2 arcs in their top 2 interchangeably. I think it could go either way. And in my opinion, which to be honest is the only one that really matters, is that the Falcon of the Millennium Empire is the second best arc in Berserk. Now, if you've been following the channel, you'll know that in the past, I had this at like a 6 to a 7 out of 10 rating for this Millennium Falcon arc. I don't know what kind of meth I was smoking. See people, this is why you reread your manga. You may find whole new enjoyment even in something that you really loved, like how I felt with Berserk. I mean, I wasn't a massive fan of this arc. Now it's my second favorite in the entire series. Now, the number one thing that I absolutely adore about this arc is just how grand everything is. Now, Miura has one, I think, very underrated talent when it comes to drawing his manga, and that is displaying the scale of things that are absolutely massive. We see it a lot in his one-shot manga, Gigantomaxia, and I noticed it a lot more after reading that, going back through Berserk, that there are just so many cool moments where he displays how big, how massive, how grand something is in comparison to smaller things. I mean, you have like the big demon god, I forget his name, antagonist at the end of the arc with he's just raining hellfire onto his own soldiers and country, as well as showing some of the apostles like Zod and the archer and the dragon fire knight, I forget his name, I'm kicking myself right now, but just the way they're drawn is so grand, and just the feats that they do is amazing. And speaking of grand feats, boy are there enough to last you in this arc alone. I mean, just kicking things off, we have Griffith and Guts confronting each other at the Grave of Swords, I forget exactly what it's called, which is an awesome moment. Then Zod I mean, you just have to read. If you have not read this series, I don't know why you're watching this video, but holy shit, read this manga. You have the Band of the Hawks siege on the Demon City, where you get to see these massive scale battle between obviously like the orc people and Griffith's war beast and apostles. So cool, as well as like Griffith he rides Zod, goes through lightning, gets like electrocuted, so badass. And in my opinion, the Millennium Falcon arc is the very peak of Berserk artwork. Like I said, in Fantasia, I think it's not quite as good, though it's still brilliant, but here in this arc, it is at its absolute peak, and we get some of the coolest spreads in the entire manga, again tying in to the grand imagery and spectacles that are just commonplace here. Perhaps the most important thing about the Falcon of the Millennium Empire arc is that Griffith is finally back as a major character. You know, all through Conviction, we don't see him a lot, but he is finally back. His presence is really felt, and he just solidifies himself as the best manga antagonist of all time. If you're a Johan fan, I don't care, Griffith is better. And you know, kind of tying back into the whole grand spectacle feat aspect of this arc, a lot of series will fall victim to focusing too heavily on these feats and not doing enough with their characters, but there is such a healthy, perfect blend of that in the Millennium Falcon arc. It is just beautiful to watch. With this character development, the two obvious answers for best in the arc is Guts, of course, and Farnese, who finally comes into her own. I think she begins her magic journey in this arc, and you know, just seeing the stark contrast of her character from just a few volumes ago to where she ends up in the Falcon of the Millennium Empire arc is astounding. And I know I'm gonna absolutely butcher this and get roasted in the comments, but is her name Shirke? I don't know. It's hard to look at that name on page and know how to pronounce it, but the magician girl, she is a really good character as well too. And seeing, you know, somebody who depends on and also assists Guts, which is something that, you know, he hasn't had in quite a while, I think is very powerful to watch. Oh, and I almost forgot to mention the Berserker armor is introduced in this arc, given to Guts, and just some badassery ensues. Again, some amazing feats and artwork, but it also ties in really well to Guts' character development, you know, as it's kind of a symbol for how his recklessness and selfishness in his revenge plot might end up hurting the people he cares about the most. And as I'm just spouting things off the top of my head, I really can't think of any negatives I have about this entire arc. I mean, it is just so badass, so huge, so grand. The character developments, the feats, everything is just a perfect 10 out of 10. Don't know why I didn't really like this arc that much on my first reread, but I've since corrected that. And finally, coming in at the number 1 spot. There's only one arc left to list in this video, but I think it's pretty obvious I was going to put the Golden Age arc at my highest spot in this ranking. And even though I think that the Golden Age arc is the best arc in this entire series, it's still just so hard for me to fully quantify how good this arc is, you know, in words. I think something that is really taken for granted as Berserk has become, you know, so massive, so popular and acclaimed, is that the Golden Age arc is the heart of what this manga is. I mean, everything else, whether it be the introductory arc of the Black Swordsman arc or everything to follow, is based upon the events that happen in this one arc, specifically in the climax, the eclipse, which is just narrative and imagery wise has become super influential and infamous, probably the most infamous moment in all of manga. The Golden Age arc is where we really get fully properly introduced to our characters, Guts, Griffith, and Casca, which is like basically the holy trinity of manga characters. I mean, I really don't think character dynamics in manga get much better than what we get here with, you know, Casca and Guts, or Guts and Griffith. I mean, the bonds are just built up so strong, and when they get torn down, you feel it. And I think that the Golden Age arc is the perfect blend of, you know, what Berserk is mainly known for, you know, this dark fantasy imagery, killing these fantasy beasts and demons, but also tying in military action, which is something that I absolutely love in other series like, you know, Vinland Saga and Kingdom, something that is so interesting to me. And I think that they find the perfect blend between the two aspects in this arc. I mean, I could just talk myself in circles, but I think everything about this arc is perfect. If you have any things that you didn't like about this arc, leave in the comments below. I will obliterate you. With all that being said, that is going to officially wrap things up for my Berserk manga arc ranking video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed listening to what I had to say in this video about these arcs. Very different from my thoughts in the past. So I hope you Berserk fans that were mad at me in the past are at least a little bit more happy with me now. But of course, make sure to go down in the comments below and comment your own arc rankings, your thoughts on my list in the comments down below. Very curious to keep this conversation going and see what you guys have to say. But that is going to do it for this video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to leave a like and subscribe for more manga videos just like this. So yeah, this has been ThePromG. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. And as always, hope to catch you in the next one.